Erick Wolfmeyer's exhibition, Totis Viribus, at the Peter Paul Loose Gallery, features 7 new works, including 3 of his colossal scale quilts. The first of these large-scale works, Means of Living, is 3 independent essays in reds, blues, and yellows, countered with an indigo chambray throughout, mended into one physical mass. Spanning 22.5 feet in length, the scale both invites and arrests, as it establishes a distance between the work as an entity and the viewer as an audience. The hypnotic repetition of concentric squares juxtaposed with the familiarity, utility, and tactility of fabric as a medium offers an experience with the work beyond that of a typical sanctified art object, and positions the viewer alongside the artist as an intimate collaborator and meaning maker. A striking red X is the dominant feature of Mayday, You Are Here. The X, in reds, purples, oranges, and browns, gives the illusion of a sharp-edged glaze laid over an undisturbed blue and white checkerboard background. Over 8,000 deliberately placed 1.5-inch square triangle pieces replicate both the surface and technique of a large-scale painting. In this pointillistic composition, the artist enlists the viewer's eye to merge various pigments into an intelligible whole. Like many minimalist paintings, this traditionally scaled quilt comes with an extensive biography. A response to a mid-life-altering revelation and the ensuing 2 years during which the piece was completed, the artist's message is both a stranded call for help and a grounded beacon of belonging in place. Impossible to divorce artists from the places in which they live and work, Voices of the Desert calls on the long history of landscape as creative influence. The mapping impulse is powerfully evident in the topography echoed in this quilt by the Iowa-based artist. Inextricably linked with a return from the American West to the Midwest, the artist's process bears greater resemblance to journaling than deliberate research. Past and present are illuminated in warm, earthy tones that reflect both time spent in the desert and farm fields ripe for harvest. Neatly constructed triangles form alternating hourglass and bow tie shapes in vibrant pinks, greens, blues, yellows, oranges, and browns, which undulate in patterns that retain the wild fractals of nature. Dreamer is the second of Wolfmeyer's colossal scale quilts, at 8 feet high and 22 feet long. 3 stacked rows of 24 distinct tone-on-tone squares chronicle an abstract story that moves through a full spectrum of bold, playful color combinations. Even with no immediately discernible subject matter, examined within the tradition of history painting, Dreamer challenges the viewer to consider which types of art and subject matter deserve to be of such large proportion. Without figures or apparent plot lines, the piece relies upon smooth, symmetrical lines and a warm, cool color balance to create its own cohesion. In stark contrast to its cheerful surface, the quilt's subterranean narrative explores the dire plight of refugees, particularly children, fleeing poverty, geopolitical violence, and the accelerating evidence of climate change. Titled after a symbol of remembrance and sacrifice, Poppyfield is the first colossal scale quilt Wolfmeyer completed, and one of his most personal pieces to date. It foreshadowed and subsequently documented the recurrent loss and resurfacing of his mother, paralleled by that of his own identity. He employs only primary color solids, red, yellow, and blue, to tessellate a small section of a weaving pattern into a grand recital of intersecting lines and shapes. True to Hemingway's iceberg theory, the full story known only to the artist, he edits out what need not be said, and presents only that which distills his essential aim. If the visible art object alone represents 20% of Hemingway's iceberg, its largely abstract elements leave ample room for what remains to exist solely in the transaction between the viewer and the quilt. At over 10.5 feet high, Cross-Quarter Embrace version 2 towers above the viewer, not to intimidate, but to offer respite from the myopic, slouching postures induced by smartphones and laptops. The dramatic vertical orientation of the piece not only draws attention outward and upward, but also makes provisions for introspection. Banner-like qualities reference the artist's earliest exposure to the arts through the paraphernalia of the liturgical church year, coupled with the soaring architecture of sacred spaces, an age-old call to the infinite. An unplanned second-generation precursor to Poppyfield, this piece stands both in contrast and conversation with its successor, both works set in motion by color repetition and swift diagonal shifts in pattern. A tiny woven pattern in a shirt worn by actor Johnny Depp in the movie Chocolat provides the visual launch point for Johnny Cake. The quilt's nostalgic palette of reds, browns, and cheddars evokes the comfort and warmth of a home-cooked meal, inspiration drawn directly from one of the artist's favorite childhood books, Journey Cake Ho, the humble tale of an Appalachian boy named Johnny and an errant rolling journey cake that leads him back home. Wolfmeyer's work is emblematic of connectivity and community within a broad creative economy. Each hand-quilted by Amish quilters through a brokered collaboration, his quilts skillfully merge art and craft, embrace the aesthetics of the working class, and reject the notion of the artist as lone creator. Totis Viribus is on view at the Peter Paul Luce Gallery, January 18th to February 19th, 2021, at Cornell College in Mount Vernon, Iowa.